Okay, I'm doing a portrait of an interesting old gentleman by the name of Wally Kerr. And Wally died within the last month in his 88th year. And Wally was an interesting character who grew up in three different locations: Chilliwack, working on the old Kickbush Willis Ranch, then moved up into the Similkameen area working for Garney Willis, driving sheep. And as life and time progressed, Wally worked as an operator in one of the early copper mines at Olalla. And a lot of people don't know there was copper mines over at Olalla. Then he was an independent logger. He'd go up into the bush in the winter and cut the trees and then skid them down. But he also worked for the Willis Ranch pushing sheep. There's an interesting story. They were taking sheep from Karamias. Wally'd be a teenager, and they were to take them to White Lake. And Mr. Willis said, "I'll meet you on the road and bring you your lunch." Well, 4:30 in the afternoon, they're driving up the White Lake Draw and getting past Horn Lake. And Wally's still pushing 500 sheep with a dog, and he hasn't had anything. And eventually, just as he's making camp, Mr. Willis comes along with his lunch. Eventually he got there. But an interesting man. I knew him for about 25 years or so. Went camping with him, but so I'm just doing a drawing of him here in a painting. So that's still got a lot of work to do with it. Well, I like historic landscapes, and I also like old historic buildings and the story that goes behind them. So this is a rainstorm over in Karamias Costin area, and it's looking over to the old Quadleg ranch on the other side of the river. This is from the Barcelo Back Road. These are a combination of watercolor, ink, and pastel. The next one is the Val Haynes Ranch at Road 22 at, some people call it Asuyas and others call it Oliver. Oliver claims it, but it's, this was the ranch that was built by Val Haynes about 1890 in a place called the Meadows. And most people will recognize it as the old Haynes Ranch ruins, and there's a piece of the original river down below, and over on this side is the barn. The barn survives in fairly good condition because it replaced a barn that had been burnt in 1916. This is out in Douglas Lake. Did this about 2 years ago, and it's on the road from Westwold over to Douglas Lake and Quilchena. The neat thing is that this was a ruin, and then went back again last fall to be able to do some more painting and drawing out there, and came around the corner, and here this thing is all restored, new windows, it's got a nice foundation underneath it, and it's all been restored and fixed. It's really nice to see a piece of history. I don't know the story behind the place, so. This is an old truck that was on the northwest corner of Horn Lake. And Horn Lake is just to the west of Twin Lake. And this was the old C.B. de Green homestead, and dates back to the 1890s. And there's a big barn in behind there. That's all that survives. And this truck ruin was where there were some houses that were there. Interestingly enough, the people who lived here are buried there, and there's 4 graves underneath the great big juniper tree, and the crosses are made out of what looks to be mine drills out of the old Orofino gold mine, which was above Horn Lake. This is engine 3613 with my grandfather in front of it. And this was made into a first day cover. This is my granddad and just one of the engines on the steam railway. This is done from an old family photograph. The cabooses was made, when did I make that? I forget, a number of years ago. And then I did this one, which is made into a stamp. And this commemorated the 100th anniversary of the trains running. I just drew these ones because they're whimsical and they're just kind of fun. I've just always been fascinated by it. Ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated by why things were there, the people that lived there. There's a story behind it. It was a form of relaxation for me just to doodle. And not being a very academic student, I sometimes could do drawings and ended up graduating out of high school by passing my science and my math by painting a 4 by 8 foot mural for the school because I knew I was never going to need it. But I'm always fascinated by the stories behind these things. This is Penn Dickens' first hospital built in 1908 and was there on Fairview Road as a hospital until 1916 when what is known as the Haven Hill Hospital was built. This was the scene that you would see from my mom and dad's front yard. And Dr. Boyd was the last family to live in there, Dr. David Boyd and his wife, forget her name now. This is what the building looked like from the front. And what was interesting is that Miss Edith Hancock had come out from England to be able to establish this cottage hospital. It was only 4 beds. It had an operating room, and a creek that doesn't exist anymore called Shatford Creek came down through the back and crossed Fairview Road just about 200 feet south of Preston Avenue. And that was their water supply. They would have to bail water out of the creek, boil it on the old McClary wood stove in the kitchen to be able to have sterile water and also to be able to bake their surgical equipment and to sterilize it. And you can imagine what that must have been like. And I guess the staff lived upstairs, just one big board on stone foundation, and it lasted until 1964 when it was demolished, and it is now the site of the Evergreen Apartments at 948 Fairview Road. So a really neat piece of history. Something will happen with these drawings. If somebody wants to buy them for a significant amount of money, we'll donate it to the hospital building fund. This next one is White Lake, and this was built about 1893, 94. This is looking south-southeast. The buildings in here, some of them date right back to 1895, because this was the site of this little building in here of the White Lake Post Office. And Mr. Hiram Ingley was the postmaster there from 1895 to 1906. Most people know it more as the Guernsey Ranch because they seem to have owned it for the longest period and currently operated by the Nature Trust through the Clifton family cattle ranch. It all belongs to them. But the post office stayed there until 1925, and it's still there and being used as an office by the people that run the Nature Trust. This is a caboose that was part of the stamp that we can show you over here that was the centennial for the Kettle Valley Steam Railway for McCullough's Wonder. And limited edition stamp that then produced revenue to restore the railways operations. This is out of Okanagan County, a little place called Molson, just right on the American border. It was a great rum running village. Probably 25, 30 people live there today. There's Old Molson and New Molson. This is the St. Stephen's Anglican Church up in Summerland. I did this one and this one quite some time ago. This is a church over at Nicola, the sycamoose, which is also made into a stamp. I like these because, again, this one was for the centennial of the boats. The neat thing is that I like to find out what they look like, and because all we ever see of the boats are black and white photographs. So by determining what the colors were, then it was easy to do a watercolor painting, give people a sense of what it looked like. And the tug is there because they were both built in 1914. The stamp, again, the stamp that was made and with the first day cover, we generated a considerable amount of funding by the sale of that for the restoration of the ship. I'm not too sure what amount, but several thousands of dollars. And the day that we published this one, I think we did most of the sales and almost sold out in the first 45 minutes. This is the little sawmill up at Chute Lake, and a lot of people don't know that there was a mill there, and it was what they call a shook mill. So logs were brought here, and the lumber was then milled so that the wood then went down to the packing houses, and the wood was for making apple boxes. History's always been a fascinating hobby for me, recording it in various ways, by writing, by drawing, doing paintings. And I think I really had to be really grateful, because the 20 plus years that I've been associated with the museum to help preserve the community's history has really been a privilege to be able to record people's personal lives and their story and preserve it for future generations to know what the Okanagan used to be like.